Miss Jennifer Doran at Jennifer Doran, psychic medium, jenniferdoran.com. How are you? And how's my boy Erik?
I'm great. He's great. He's so funny. He's like, I'm always great. I'm always great. Like,
Well, of course you are.
yes. How are you?
I'm doing good. Found out I got to have $25,000 worth of dental work done. Because that's a collapsed bite or something. It's called old age, whatever. I don't know. But anyway, we're not going to talk about me. We're going to talk about the Spanish influenza, because I just saw a program on it that's quite interesting. Erik, did you gather any information that you could share, like how this all started? It was
yeah, so basically he says there's a couple things. It starts just like other viruses start. They, you know, they just morph and they change from something else into something worse. But this one in particular, the Spanish flu, and then of course we can consider coronavirus to be that way too. Those were written into, just like we all have soul contracts. Sometimes there's contracts that are global.
Yeah.
And this, yes, this was a global contract.
For what purpose?
So what he's saying is that anytime something major like this affects so many people, there's actually something that connects to the collective consciousness here and tries to bring awareness to the collective consciousness, because, you know, just like now globally, we can relate to people that we don't know. We can relate to the fear that somebody halfway around the world and countries halfway around the world are experiencing.
Yeah.
So ideally it raises stuff like this. The intention is to raise the vibration of the planet.
Wow.
Ultimately.
Why? But by the sense of feeling connected?
The sense of feeling connected, but then also, you know, he says anytime, and if you look at it in individual, you know, I went to school for economics, so sometimes I put things in economic terms. Okay. And if you looked at it like micro and macro economics, so this would be like a macro thing, but the micro, everybody's learning something from this, whether it be compassion, whether it's learning about loss. And we know on an individual basis, if we have even a little bit of self-awareness, when we go through something hard, there's room for growth, there's room for learning, there's room to evolve the soul.
Right. So when you wiped out families sometimes, do you remember, Erik, when you know, every Thursday I took them on a field trip when I was homeschooling them, and we went to the Glenwood Cemetery where Howard Hughes is buried, and we did for art, we did gravestone rubbings. And so many of them were just, the entire families died. 1918, 1917. Yes. It was just awful.
Yeah. Well, and then he's saying about that is sometimes for some of those families, the lineage of that family was just to be done. That lineage was, so it's why whole families, entire families were wiped out.
Did it have anything to do with World War I, like to try to end the war, or maybe it had nothing to do with that? I don't know.
What he's saying about that is that they were just happening at the same time. It wasn't necessarily done to end the war. They just corresponded in the timing.
Okay, interesting. So a lot of the theory that I saw in this documentary about the Spanish influenza was that it was started in Kansas by ground zero was Albert Glitchell, a pig farmer.
So what I'm hearing from Erik,
you can translate, get Albert Glitchell to give you some information. But.
Yeah. So what Erik is saying is that it did. This is one of the first cases, one of the cases they can bring it back to, but he's saying that there were multiple starting points.
Oh, okay.
So
one of them then, right?
Yeah, yes. Yeah, because he draws me over to like France, and they're being like, so it's almost so hard to say like this is the exact place it started, because it really kind of started in a couple places.
Well, that's interesting, because one of these questions from the community did start at that French train station with soldiers. Was that
that is kind of one of the other starting places. It's not what Erik is saying is that there's not just one case. There were a few cases that kind of popped up at the same time. Again, this is where the whole part of it being contracted started. So what he's saying is back then, okay, like the coronavirus here, it could start in one place because then everybody was going to be flying everywhere and take it everywhere. Travel was so much slower back then, so it had to start in multiple places to fulfill the contract of the global contract.
Well, where did it begin? Did it begin in pigs or some other animal, bats, or did it just, was it completely natural?
He's saying it didn't. Erik is saying this did not jump species. It started in humans. So I don't have enough knowledge to know how a virus actually starts, but yes.
Well, here's a question. Was the Spanish flu a naturally occurring virus or was it a created mutation?
Okay. So Erik says it was a naturally occurring virus. Nobody created this and then sent it out. It was naturally occurring, or it occurred organically. It occurred organically.
Oh, can any animals carry it?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of animals?
Well, he says birds and pigs.
Oh, okay. All right. So Erik, so it can cross. I mean, maybe it started in humans, but it can cross from animal to human, or
well, it's different now. It's not the same. It's not. I mean, it is the same, but it's changed. It's changed since it initially started in the first couple years it was around. It has changed, just like the coronavirus is doing.
Okay. All right.
It's changing.
Right. All right. So that's interesting. Let's see. I was wondering if the epidemic of 1918 was started by a soldier from the United States who received an experimental vaccination, then went to Europe, and whatever was in the vaccine, they spread the virus in the trenches.
So the vaccine didn't spread the virus is what Erik is saying, but yes, soldiers definitely traveled around and spread this virus. But again, it was organically occurring. It was something that we needed to experience.
Did it go from what was the direction? Pig, bird to human, or human to pig, bird? Or both? I don't know.
Erik is saying human, and then as it morphs and changes, it's seen in animals. It's not the exact same. It's not the exact same as what we're talking about with the Spanish flu. As it morphs and changes, this is where we see it in other species.
That makes sense. Why did it kill more men in their prime, like in their 20s and 30s, than is usual for an influenza?
So
probably soldiers,
Yes. So Erik is saying, be careful how you word this. And I said, okay. So another aspect of the he's laughing at me because he's like, how are you going to say this? How are you going to say this?
Oh.
Of the times, in those times, losing young, strong men hurt everybody a lot more than losing the young and the elderly. Okay. So there's another layer of lessons here.
Why? Because they were the support for the family,
protection. Yes. Soldiers. So soldiers fighting the wars. So that added another level to the learning and to the lessons, and people that maybe didn't think that they would have to step up and do certain things had to find the strength within themselves to get something done that their young, strong men would have ordinarily done. So there's some of that to it. And of course, sorry, I must have a young, strong man coming in with Erik.
With the flu.
Giving me the respiratory stuff. it was a lot with the soldiers because of the close quarters and the,
Oh, yeah.
all of this. So that also played a role in why so many of them were affected.
Yeah, of course. Did it have anything to do with getting women to become more empowered to support
Yes.
family?
Yes, it did. Yes, it definitely had, and that was more of a long-term thing, but yes,
Okay.
for women to find their strength, their power.
Okay.
Yes.
What was the actual number, more or less, of the people who actually succumbed to the Spanish flu?
Died.
Yeah.
Tens of millions. Tens of
Wow.
millions.
All right. How long did it take to become less lethal, more or less?
Okay, so Erik is saying that I guess this is influenza A, right? The Spanish flu is influenza A. People still are dying from it. People still die from that original.
Oh, okay.
So when you're asking how many people have died of it, are we talking about when it was whatever the 2-3 years it was?
Yeah, probably.
Okay, so I mean 50-60 million people died, but since then people die every year of that
Yeah.
strain of the flu.
Right.
Still.
Wow.
I'm sorry, you asked another question. What was that?
Oh, how long did it take to kind of like be less lethal? Like Omicron is less lethal now.
Yeah.
So
He's
couple
saying,
years.
two about 2 years, a year and a half, 2 years to where it was where the people weren't as fearful anymore because they were seeing
Okay.
people surviving it.
Okay.
People were still, of course, dying, but there was hope. There was hope that people were going to recover. Because what Erik is saying is for a while it was a death sentence for a lot of people. If you got it, you just felt like you were going to die for a period of time in those whatever 2-3 years, whatever that was, 2 years, 2.5 years.
Yeah, something like that. So the soldiers on the front lines, of course, they're under a lot of stress. Did that contribute to the high death rate in the young men?
Yeah. So the stress, the malnourishment, unfortunately, soldiers aren't always given the best nutrition.
Yeah.
So yeah, they were malnourished, they were stressed. There's so much fear in there. And of course,
too, I'm sure,
yes. And fear can allow a lot of stuff to get grip into the body.
Why do people still die from influenza, from the flu today?
Some people, it's just in their contract that there's
Okay.
just like people contracted to die of COVID. For some people, it's just in their contract to die. And some people, it might be an exit point for them. And this is how they go. It creates such a weakness in their body that they do take that exit point.
Okay.
But it's just the virus. The flu virus is meant to be part of the human experience.
Okay.
It's meant to be here.
Woohoo!
Yes.
Well, we do have to have that polarity, don't we?
We do.
What is the purpose of a virus? Does it modify our DNA?
It does. Long term, yes.
Okay. Now, what similarities and differences are there between the 1918 and the 2019?
Between the actual virus or the experience?
The experience or anything you think we need to know, Erik?
Well, there's a lot of similarities. I mean, there's more similarities, he's saying, than there are differences. It's a virus that, develops, it affects globally, it affects people, it kills people without discernment. Both of these viruses, they did and do kill everybody. Yes, it's more likely certain people, but it affects everybody.
Yeah.
So it's gonna lessen. It already has. They both morphed and lessened into something less lethal. So in that regard, they're very similar. And he is saying, history does repeat itself. History repeats itself, and this is an example of that. There was no way to avoid either of these. These were both in the contract for the Earth. So there was no way to avoid either of them. However, the differences, some of the differences are just the coronavirus rapidly traveled, but that has to do with our planes,
Yeah, we're more mobile, of course.
Yes. the fear is there, although he says, believe it or not, there was less fear with coronavirus in general than there was with the Spanish flu.
Wow.
Because there's so much more knowledge, information is so much more easy to access. We have medicines that we know can help. We have, so there is less fear. So he says one of the purposes of history repeating itself is to learn and grow. And so he says when you look at one compared to the other, we are doing better this time as far as knowledge and fear goes. Of course, there's still a lot of fear here.
Of course. So, but it seemed like the contract was different. It seems like one of the contracts for this one is self-reflection, being walked down and having more time on our hands, and being able to redefine our priorities, our careers, etc., reimagine our lives, so to speak. Is that
yes. And he's saying that is something that wasn't really feasible with the Spanish flu, where people weren't really able to just lock themselves up and not work or be able to work from home, do their work from home. That wasn't a possibility. So yes, much more self-reflection, but as a race, he says we've evolved enough from one to the next to be able to handle that. And people still definitely struggled with it, the isolation, and still are.
Yeah. All right. Did the majority of people die from pneumonia? Well, they did. I'm pretty sure. Staph pneumonia. I mean, your white cell count just takes a nosedive, and that sets you up. It makes you vulnerable to bacterial infections, secondary bacterial infections.
Yes. And there is similarity with the Spanish flu and coronavirus there too.
Okay. Does this have anything to do with wearing masks during the Spanish flu? Did that increase
contribute to it
of pneumonia, of secondary pneumonia? I can't see how it would.
Yeah, no, I can't. I'm getting a no for that.
Were people back then really good about wearing masks like we are today?
They were pretty good, yeah.
Okay.
Although availability was, so it's not like the mask like we think, it's more like clothes or, some sort of material, not as effective as some of the stuff we have today.
Now, someone said, I heard it was something in men's throats that not in women that made them more likely to die. Is that true? Or is it just
Erik says no to that.
Okay. What is the source of any virus if it needs a host to survive? Yeah. How does it begin?
Well, yes. Sometimes that is through help from spirit.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Like in these situations when stuff needs to happen, basically it's kind of just put out there. I mean, it's kind of like, it's like if you lived in a room all by yourself forever, you may still get sick. It's like, where did that come from?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. That's true. All right. What is these? Oh, no, do this. This is interesting. If the 1918 flu strain was an entity, what would it tell us about itself?
The 1918 flu strain were an entity. What would it tell us about itself?
Talk to it. Erik, what message would it give?
So what he's showing me, and it does not look like a human entity. It's very large.
Okay.
It's a very large entity.
That.
And basically it would say I had a job to do.
Okay.
And I did that job. There's no remorse. There's no apology. I had a job.
Yes. All right. The bubonic plague led to a change in the workforce, and the 1918 flu led to the emergence of the middle class. What is the influence of this current situation? What big change did it make?
So as far as big changes, because he said, Erik's saying there's like little changes, there's little changes that everybody's seeing as far as access to stuff, and the way the work environment has changed. There's little changes, but as far as big changes go, this was really supposed to bring about a global spiritual awakening.
Okay.
So like, the 5D stuff moving into, that kind of that kind of stuff. This is the intent behind this.
It's interesting. The 1918 flu led to the emergence of the middle class. Is that because, why is that? From your knowledge of economics, why do you think that is? Because people entered the workforce that they were forced to enter the workforce?
Yeah, there's something about, being forced to enter the workforce, having to perhaps pay a little bit more to get people. So it's maybe not worth the risk at this price, but at this price, it's worth the risk to get back out there. So people that were out doing the work were maybe making a bit more money.
Okay.
Because otherwise it's, like I said, it's not worth the risk. He's saying it's not worth the risk to go out for this amount, but for this amount it is.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that makes total sense. Is it true that aspirin was being prescribed at dangerous dosage levels? And was there a percentage of the 1918 flu deaths that were actually due to aspirin overdose? Wow, interesting.
Yeah, so it was. However, for some people, it was actually an effective treatment.
Okay.
Yeah, he says, yes, it was. And yes, some people did die from that, but for some people, it actually helped.
Okay. Was it a small percentage that died from aspirin overdose?
It was a very small percentage.
Okay.
5, maybe.
Okay. Was the Spanish flu man-made? We know that's not true. And who did it affect? Did it affect a certain socioeconomic class more, like the rich or the poor?
No, it was just like the coronavirus. It was not discerning as to who it affected.
Okay, as far as race, economics is concerned.
Yes.
Did it affect one race more than another? Or was it more lethal in one race compared to another?
So, no. However, maybe yes, maybe white people, maybe there was more white deaths from this.
Okay.
But it wasn't, I don't know, that has more to do with the transmission. He's saying it's not that it was more lethal for white people. I don't know how else to put that.
Okay, well, maybe there were more white soldiers back then. Could that be it?
Perhaps. Yeah, that's what I was kind of.
And I don't know, maybe there wasn't. I have no
Yeah,
idea.
I don't know either, but yeah, if you took the numbers, he says, maybe, I don't know.
Is this virus related, this current virus related to the 1918 one in terms of makeup? And was it meant as a depopulation mechanism? Well, influenza is different than coronavirus, so.
Yeah, I mean, they're both viruses, so in that regard, yeah, they're related, but yes.
Was it meant for depopulation mechanism?
So, not in the sense that there are humans sitting here saying, let's send this virus out to depopulize Earth, but on a spiritual level, yes.
Okay.
Yes, because anytime mass amounts of people leave the planet, it creates an energy situation.
Yeah. Can you ask if aliens had anything to do with it?
With the Spanish?
Yeah.
Erik says it was in the contract. It was contracted. So
not aliens.
Yeah. Yeah, not alien. It was in the contract. It was always going to happen.
Okay. Was it an exit point through ascension that didn't manifest back then?
Yeah. Yeah. We were not ready.
Oh, yeah, really. Is there a link between the rise of Nazism and the influenza epidemic and the First World War?
Again, he's not linking the flu to the war or Nazism. So
it's like, I bet it's shortened the war, did it?
Yeah, it's in the sense it didn't propel it. It didn't propel anything in that regard.
Okay. Did the people back then think the Spanish flu was a pandemic? Something like, I mean, did they have, just like we think of this with the present virus? Or did they take it more did they take it more seriously than we're taking this?
So yes, even then it was considered like a pandemic, and he's talking about like tuberculosis and stuff like that. Was that the bring out your dead? What? Or was that the Spanish flu where literally they were just putting
Oh,
They're
probably
dead.
bubonic plague for sure. I know
Yeah.
that.
So it's like these things are all, there was the awareness of the pandemic and the
Oh,
plague. There was
yeah.
a lot more fear because of less knowledge.
Yeah, okay, that we already covered that. All right. What effects from the 1918 pandemic have people carried into their next incarnations when they died of Spanish flu? Did they carry any of the effects of it?
Sometimes, like, somebody who's a germaphobe,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
hypochondriacs.
Okay.
That's some of the stuff that carried through. Some people would, have a fear of not being able to breathe. I can't get enough
Oh,
air,
yeah.
even if
Oh,
they
gosh.
can.
Yeah.
There's some of that kind of stuff that's carried over.
Interesting. Yeah, because like one of my kids, I remember she used to like, I'm just aware of my breath,
Yes.
even though she's fine. So
Yep.
that. Do pandemics have any astrological link? What does that mean? I'm not sure.
Connected to the stars and the planets and
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah. Yeah, they can. Yes. Yes. So somebody who is really good with astrology may have been able to predict by looking at the stars and the planet alignments that
Okay.
something was coming like this. Yes.
So we're more likely to have a pandemic with a certain astrological
Yes.
pattern.
Yeah. So what Erik is saying about that is that there does need to be facilitators for stuff that happens. So even when something is in your contract, actually here in the physical world, there still needs to be facilitators. If somebody's contracted to die of cancer, yeah, I mean, people get cancer and they have no idea how they got it, but something put the carcinogens into their body. There was some sort of a weakness in the physical body that allowed it to get in. There still needs to be facilitators. And so for pandemics, yes, sometimes one of the facilitators is the planetary alignment, the astrological situation.
Okay. Did the souls who suffered and died from the 1918 influenza epidemic go into that life as a contractual agreement? We said yes, right?
Some, not all. No, because sometimes,
okay.
Like if we have multiple exit points, there were people who took an exit point, even though they had others later down the road.
Okay. Now we live in an electrical universe that affects us in ways we don't understand. Was there some development of electrical grids, support structures for electricity back in 1918 that affected the planet as a whole, leading people to experience flu-like symptoms?
No, Erik said virus, right? there's no connection there.
Okay. I think this is probably the same person asking this one. Much by like 5G is being implemented in places throughout the world now, right? One of the first areas where 5G was implemented was Wuhan. Are the present viral symptoms our body's negative reaction to electrical pollution? And maybe there's a combination of 5G and a virus concurrently?
Okay, so in 1918, there wasn't a connection. However, now there are people who, because of all the electromagnetic and all the stuff that's going on, that their bodies do get weakened by that stuff.
Oh, wow.
So
more susceptible to the virus?
Yes, correct. But then what he's saying is that anything that weakens your body, weakens the immune system and makes you more susceptible to stuff.
Yeah.
So yes, that is a role now for some people, what has weakened their bodies.
How can we protect ourselves?
So I know that there's, he's showing me like, the orgonite can protect, but the 5G is very powerful. Even the strips, they used to sell those strips that would help with the Wi-Fi signals and stuff.
Yeah.
One of the things is that, like with our DNA changing, some people, as the technology gets more advanced, our bodies do adapt to protect us from it. Not everybody. So really, he says the only way to truly protect yourself is to kind of go off the grid and not, live someplace where you don't have that interference.
That ain't easy. Okay, for those who survived the Spanish flu, was there anything that they did differently, physically, spiritually, etc., compared to those who did not survive?
So just like we're going to see globally here, people maybe were more cautious about going out and maybe covering themselves or keeping distance and trying to eat more healthy. But, after a certain amount of time, that all went to the wayside. You get more comfortable again. And, but yes, the people who survived it, and there was a lot of PTSD, a lot of trauma, for people, for years after, until Erik says basically until everybody who could remember it had died off.
Oh God. Yeah. I mean, some of them lost all their children,
Yeah.
or both their parents. Yeah, of course.
Yes. And just like with coronavirus, there was many suicides. The suicide rate went up during that time as well.
Kind of awful. Was there any spiritual purpose? Well, we talked about that. How did it end? I don't think it did. It
didn't end because it's influenza A. We still have it.
Right.
Just like the coronavirus is doing it, it changes into something less lethal.
Well, it's a smart thing for a virus to do. You don't want to kill off all the hosts.
Right.
You want to just be able to stay in that host as long as possible and have it super transmissible. So go to the next host, meaningful lessons that we learned from it. Anything else that we've already said a bit about that?
There's always more to learn from something, and some of that goes to the individuals. Like what does the individual learn from it? But on a global aspect, enlightenment this time around, it was intended to happen last time around, but it didn't. There was just too much fear. Erik says there was too much fear last time, and I know a lot of people were scared this time, but there was a lot less fear this time around.
Yeah, that's good. Well, like you said, we know more now. Woodrow Wilson really struggled with the containment of this virus, and it seems like he made many of this, or I'll say this, had many of the challenges that Biden now faces.
Yeah,
he's making some of the same mistakes that Woodrow Wilson did. So I'm wondering, is Biden, and he's become kind of a progressive, and Woodrow Wilson's the father of progressivism. Is Biden the reincarnation of Woodrow Wilson?
No, he's not. Although there are a lot of similarities.
Yeah,
he's not the reincarnation. But I will say this: Erik was saying, once these viruses got going, there wasn't a whole lot, no matter how hard anybody tried, it was going to do what it was going to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was contracted.
Yes.
Yeah.
The ball was rolling. And so in a society where we tend to be critical and judgmental of other people's choices, it can look like they screwed up, but any different decisions, we would still be in the same place.
Right.
So in an alternate universe where this is all happening and the presidents took totally different actions, the same result would happen. Yes.
Any advice for Biden, Erik? Probably nothing you can do.
No.
Everybody's going to get it.
Yes. Yeah. And the fact of the matter is to reach herd immunity, we have to get to like 95% of people having.
Very high. I know that. Yeah.
Yes.
Anything else you can tell us before we close, Erik?
Yeah, he says you guys are on the other side of the midline of the virus this time.
Good. Anything else we can learn from the Spanish flu?
No.
Well, I guess that's it then. Thank you, Jennifer. Y'all can check her out at psychicmediumjenniferdoran.com, which we'll put in the description box. And thank you, Erik. I love you both. I love you all out there. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit the notification button. All right. Love you.
Thank you. Love you.
Bye.
Bye.